Welcome back. Today's lecture we'll be looking at price determination. To recap, we have seen from the beginning of this class that as a human society, our needs are many. Meanwhile, the resources that we have in order to satisfy these needs are limited. So, society has to find a mechanism as to how we can manage these limited resources we have in order to achieve human material wants. So two major schools of thought emerge: capitalism, socialism. As I've said earlier, socialism is dead. There is nowhere in the world where socialism is working. But what we have now working is the capitalism. So the focus of this course is to look at how that capitalist economy works. That is scarce resource allocation in a capitalist economy. So, as I said earlier, in every market there are two players, a buyer and a seller, and the market coordinates the activities of these buyers and sellers. So, we look at demand, which is from the point of view of the buyer or the consumer, how consumer responds to quantity demanded as a result of the price change. Then you also look at that of the producer or the seller. So we look at how much a person is willing to sell as the price of the commodity changes over time. So this topic seeks to see how consumers and producers interact in a market in order to determine the price of the commodity. So for a particular commodity, it is the interaction between consumers and producers that eventually determine the price of the commodity. And the price of the commodity in turn determine how much an individual can buy given his income, which is the way the market, and for that matter the price, helps in the allocation of resources. So we start off by looking at what the price of commodities. From the consumer's point of view, the price of a commodity is the highest amount the consumer is the highest amount of money a consumer is willing and prepared to sacrifice in order to obtain a unit of a commodity. Market, when we talk about markets for a commodity, we mean market for a particular commodity. So when we talk of market, we are not talking about a particular location like whole market where everything is being sold there. That's not what we are talking about. If you go to whole market, within the market we have several markets from the economic point of view. So if you go to, let's say, where yam is sold, in economics we can talk about yam market. So that is where buyers and sellers of yam interact. When you go to maize, where maize is sold, you have buyers and sellers coming together to interact. So that is a maize market. So in economics, when we talk about market, we are looking at an arrangement that brings buyers and sellers of a particular commodity together in order to transact a business. Now, markets could be physical or virtual. These days, we have online markets where buyers and sellers can interact to transact business. And we also have physical markets where people can meet and trade. So we are going to look at the price mechanism. That is how demand and supply determine the price of a commodity. In a price mechanism, it is the interaction of demand and supply that determines the market price of a commodity. there are certain economic forces that are always acting in markets. Uh, those forces may be coming from surplus or shortage. This surplus and shortage always exert some kind of pressure on the price of the commodity to adjust until such a time that the surplus or the surplus or the shortage is eliminated. Let's look at this table. We have the first column talks about the price of a the unit price of a particular commodity. The second column talks about the quantity demanded. Then the third column talks about quantity supplied. When the price of the commodity is 100, quantity demanded by consumers is 10 units. It's 10 units of the commodity, which is let's say in kilograms. But the quantity supplied in that market is 50 units. So supply is more than quantity supplied is more than quantity demanded. So this is a surplus. Once there is surplus in the market, there will be pressure on the price of the commodity to fall. And that's why you see the price moving from 100 to 80. As the price falls, consumers become happy. So they will increase their consumption from 10 units to 20 units. At the same time, as the price becomes lower, producers become discouraged. So they reduce their production from 50 to 40. Even at the price of 80, you can still see that quantity supplied is 40, but quantity demanded is 20. So here, there is still surplus in the market. Once there is surplus, there will be a downward pressure on the price of the commodity. So the price will move from 80 to 60, as you can see in the black arrow on the right, coming down. Now, when the price is at 60, because there is a reduction in price, consumers are happy and they will increase their demand for the commodity. So the quantity demand has increased from 20 to 30. The producers too, because there is a reduction in price, they are discouraged. So they also reduce the amount they produce to 30. Now at the price of 60, the quantity supplied is exactly equal to quantity demanded. So there is no surplus here. Once there is no surplus, there will be no pressure on the price of the commodity to change. So the price will remain at 60. So the price of the commodity becomes 60 Ghana cedis per unit. And in this case, there is no tendency for the price to change. Let's start from the bottom. When the price is 20, because the price is low, quantity demanded is very high, which is 50. But the price is not encouraging to produce, so they produce only 10 units. At this price, you can see that there is going to be a shortage in the market because consumers want 50. Meanwhile, the producers are only supplying 10. So there's going to be a shortage in the market. Once there is shortage in the market, the price of the commodity will be forced to rise. So the price will rise from 20 to 40. As the price rises, demand for the commodity will fall with the loss of demand. So the higher the price, the lower the quantity demanded. So the quantity demanded will fall from 50 to 40. While demand is falling, supply is rising because the price has gone up. So more will be supplied according to the law of supply. So the quantity supplied will move from 10 to 20. At the price of 40, you can see that the quantity demanded is more than quantity supplied. So there is still a shortage in the market. And this shortage will push the price of the commodity up. And when that happens, the price will move from 40 to 60. At 60, quantity demanded will decrease in line with the law of demand, while quantity supplied will increase in line with the law of supply. The higher the price, the higher the quantity supplied. But the higher the price, the lower the quantity demanded. So at 60, you can see that the the quantity demanded is exactly equal to quantity supplied. So whether you are moving from the top or from the bottom, from the top there is shortage, but from the top there is surplus. But from from below, you can see that there is shortage. So whichever market you find yourself, depending on the situation prevailing in that market, if it is shortage, it will push the price up until quantity supplied is exactly equal to quantity demanded. If it is surplus, it will push the price down until such a time that quantity demanded is equal to quantity supplied. If you see the yellow uh, highlights over here, the price at which quantity supplied is exactly equal to quantity demanded is known as the equilibrium price. In economics, when we talk about equilibrium, we are referring to a situation where there is no economic forces in place to cause a change. So there is no tendency for change. So when they say there is equilibrium, it means there is a balance. So quantity demanded is equal to quantity supplied, and the the quantity the quantity supplied and consumed at the equilibrium price is known as the equilibrium quantity. So 30 is the equilibrium quantity, while 60 is the equilibrium price. So this is the way prices of goods are determined in market economies when capitalism is at work. Now, the, the table we have seen above can be plotted. If you plot price against quantity demanded, then price against quantity supplied on the same graph sheet, you have a graph of this nature where the downward sloping curve is the demand curve, whilst the upward sloping is the supply curve. The equilibrium price occurs at 60, as you can see. Then the equilibrium quantity occurs at 30. So this is the market situation where the price of the commodity is at 60 and the quantity demanded and supplied is 30. Anytime the price goes above 60, there is going to be surplus, and that surplus will force the price to come down. When the price is below 60, there is going to be shortage, and that shortage will push the price up towards 60. So this is the economic forces that are in action in the market, demand and supply, which always move prices towards equilibrium. So as you can see, uh, this graph is similar to solving a simultaneous equation using a graphical approach. So you can be given a demand and supply situation in equation form, and you can be asked to solve for the equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity. It is all about solving the system of equations simultaneously. So for instance, if you have a demand equation, 22 220 minus 50 minus 5p, then quantity supplied is minus 20 plus 3p. You can be asked to calculate the equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity from these two equations. All that you do is to solve this simultaneously. So I'm sure you all know how to solve simultaneous equations, so you should be able to do that easily. Now, so to do that in equilibrium, if you can see here, in equilibrium, you see that the quantity demanded is the same as the quantity supplied in equilibrium. So when there is equilibrium, the quantity supplied is the same as the quantity demanded. So we use that principle here. So we are saying that in equilibrium, quantity supplied is equal to quantity demanded. And since quantity supplied is the same as minus 20 plus 3p, and quantity demanded is the same as 220 minus 5p, we can equate minus 20 plus 3p to 220 minus 5p. And when you solve for the price, we will have a price to be 30. So this is the equilibrium price. Then to solve for the equivalent quantity, we put price, which is 30, into any of the equations. So you can put it in the demand or the supply equation, it will give you the same result. So when we solve for the equivalent quantity, we obtain 70. So in equilibrium, both quantity demanded and supplied are the same. So as I said, finding the equivalent price and quantity amounts to solving the equations simultaneously. Now, when we go to the market, prices of goods change over time because in every economy there are always shocks in the economy. Things happen. Things happen unexpectedly, and when they happen, they introduce uh, economic forces. That is, there will be shortage or surplus as a result of the shock. And once there is shortage or surplus, the price is going to move until the shortage or the surplus is eliminated. So we are going to see uh, some of the reasons or the reasons behind why price of goods keep changing on the market. Because if you go to the market today, in 6 months' time, the price you go and meet is not the same as what you will meet today. The price will change over time. So we want to see what are the forces behind the price change in the market. And usually the price and equivalent quantity will change when there is an exogenous shock in the economy. And technically, that kind of analysis is called comparative statics. So we are going to see the effects of change in supply and demand on equilibrium price and quantity. The first one we'll look at is an increase in demand while supply remains the same. So this will shift the demand. So what you have to do is to draw the initial equilibrium. So the initial equilibrium is that you draw the demand, you draw the price as is, the quantity as is, then you draw the demand curve D naught, D0, and draw the supply curve S0. Then the equilibrium is E0, while the equilibrium price is P0, Q0. So that is the starting point. Now the demand curve is being increased to the right. We have studied uh, some of the factors that shift the demand curve. So when any of those factors move in the right direction, the demand curve will shift to the right. For instance, when there is an increase in consumers' income, we expect the demand curve for normal goods to shift to the right. Now, when the demand curve shifts to the right, supply remains the same. So we are still on S naught. But there is a new demand curve which is D1. So where the demand curve and the supply curve, the new demand curve and the old supply curve meet is the new equilibrium, which is E1. And at E1, you can see that the price is P1 and the equivalent quantity is Q1. If you compare the new price to the old price, you realize that the equivalent price has increased, while the equilibrium quantity has also increased. Now, the explanation I provided so far is, is for the SS level type of explanation. So, what at all is happening for the price to move from P0 to P1, and then for the equivalent quantity to move from Q0 to Q1? Now, assuming that we are at E0, where the initial demand and initial supply curve meet, if for some reason the demand curve shifts to the right, let's say there is an increase in consumers' income. Once there is increase in consumers' income, if the price remains at P0, you realize that the quantity demanded will be higher than the Q1. If you project the line from P0 all the way to touch the new demand curve, you will realize that at that point, if you project it downwards to the quantity axis, that will give you the quantity demanded when the demand curve shifts to the right at price P0. At price P0, the quantity supplied will be Q0. So you can see that at P0, when the demand shifts to the right, quantity demanded will be more than quantity supplied. And that will create a shortage in the market. And once there is shortage, there is going to be an upward pressure on the price of the commodity to rise. So the price will start rising uh, from the level of E0, E0 there, and move towards E1. What is going to happen is that as long as there is shortage, the price of the commodity will rise slightly. As the price of the commodity rises, producers are happy, so they will supply more, they'll produce more. But the consumers, because the price has gone higher, they will decrease their demand. Still, the shortage will be there, it will not be entirely eliminated at that stage, so the price will be forced to go up again. When that happens, producers become happy and they supply more. But the consumers become discouraged, so they buy less. That process will continue until the price has reached P1. And at P1, we can see that the quantity supplied is exactly equal to quantity demanded. And when that happens, there is no pressure on the price to change again because there is no shortage, there is no surplus. So the equilibrium price becomes P1, whilst the equilibrium quantity becomes Q1. So in effect, an increase in demand while supply remains the same will result in an increase in equilibrium price from P0 to P1, whilst equilibrium quantity also increases from Q0 to Q1. Please, it is very important to understand the mechanism that has caused the price of the commodity to move from P0 to P1. Why is it moving? It is moving because the initial increase in demand creates a shortage in the market, and that shortage is what is pushing the price up. So as the price goes up, supply also increases, whilst demand is decreasing, narrowing the gap between demand and supply. So the shortage is being narrowed. And once the shortage still exists in the market, the price will continue going up. It will continue to go up until we reach P1. And at P1, you can see that quantity supplied is exactly equal to quantity demanded. So a new equilibrium is established at E1, where the price is higher than the initial one and the quantity also is higher than the initial one. Let's look at another example. An increase in supply while demand remains constant. When there is an increase in demand, we expect the supply curve to shift to the right. So what you have to do is to establish the initial equilibrium, where you draw the price axis, you draw the quantity axis, you draw the demand curve, initial demand curve which is D0, then the initial supply curve S0. Where they meet, you project it to the price axis, then you have your P0, you project it to quantity axis, then you have Q0. So that is the initial equilibrium. Then you shift that initial equilibrium to the right. For instance, if there is, let's say, a good weather, if you take agriculture, in our part of the world, we rely on rain-fed agriculture. So if there's a good weather and there's a bumper harvest, supply curve will shift to the right. The supply curve is not shifting to the right because the price of the commodity has changed. No, it is because of the weather. That is why we are shifting the supply curve to the right. When we are at the end of the day, what will happen is that the new supply curve S1 will intersect the old demand curve D0. And if you project it to the price axis, you get P1. and if you project it to the quantity axis, you get Q1. And if you compare this to the initial equilibrium situation, you realize that the equilibrium price has decreased from P0 to P1, while equilibrium quantity has increased from Q0 to Q1. So when there is, let's say we are in a country where farming is the main occupation, and anytime there is good rainfall, there will be plenty harvest, and the price of the commodity will fall. And people can now, with the lower price, people can now afford more of the commodity. As we saw earlier, we can still explain the economic forces that push the price from P0 to P1. Assuming we are P1, P0, assuming we are P0, P0, and the supply curve shifts to the right, maybe because there is an improvement in technology, or a reduction in costs, or a favorable government policy like subsidy, they can all shift the supply curve to the right. So if you project the price at P0 all the way to touch the new supply curve, which is S1, and we project it all the way to the quantity axis, at P0, you realize that quantity supplied will be greater than quantity demanded. Quantity demanded will be at the meeting place of the D0 and the S0, the initial equilibrium, which is Q0. But because at this price, quantity supplied is more than the quantity demanded, there is going to be a surplus in the market. And that surplus will start causing the price of the commodity to fall. As the price falls, producers are discouraged to produce. So what they do is to reduce the amount they produce because of the falling prices. So they will begin to reduce the amount of the commodity they produce. But as the price falls, consumers will begin to increase their demand for the commodity. So this process will continue until we reach a point where D0 line intersects X1 line, and we have P1. At that P1, the quantity demanded and quantity supplied uh, match. So there is no shortage, there is no surplus. So a new equilibrium is then established. So you can see that in every market, it is the shortage and surplus that causes the price of the commodity to change. But the surpluses and the shortages don't also occur on their own. The factors that influence demand and supply are the ones who causes the shortage and the surplus, and they in turn push the price of the commodity. So you can see that in the market, when the price of the commodity is falling, it discourages production, but it but it encourages consumption. So if you want to encourage production, you have to the price must be rising. And if you want, so anytime you see price of goods rising, what it simply means is that there is a shortage of the commodity in the market. So if there is a shortage in the commodity on the market, how can producers be encouraged to produce more? The only way they can be encouraged to produce more is for the price of the commodity to rise. As the price rises, they become happy and become encouraged, and they want to make more money, so they produce more. But as the price rises, the consumers also reduce their consumption. So the process will continue until the shortage is eliminated and the price goes up. The same way, when there is surplus, it means that the commodity is being produced in quantity more than necessary for society. So the price will begin to fall because of the surplus. And when the price falls, the quantity, the amount of resources devoted to the production of that commodity will be reduced, and the quantity supplied will gradually fall, while demand will gradually increase as the price falls. This process will continue until the surplus is eliminated and a new price will be established at P1. So that is how That is the economic explanation behind the movement of the price from P0 to P1. We can also have a situation where both demand and supply will increase by the same magnitude. So you see the demand curve. So you see the demand curve moving from D0 to D1, while the supply curve is moving from S0 to S1. Because this demand and supply are increasing by the same margin or magnitude, it will not create surplus. It will also not create deficit. Are you getting me? It will not create surplus. It will also not create shortage because they are both increasing at the same time or by the same magnitude. Because of that, the price of the commodity will not change at all. So the price of the commodity will remain the same. Then what are we saying with the equivalent quantity? The equivalent quantity increases from Q0 to Q1. So anytime both demand and supply changes, the question you should ask yourself is, does that change introduce surplus or deficit? That is shortage. Does it introduce shortage or surplus? And when we talk about shortage, we are referring to a situation whereby quantity demanded exceeds quantity supplied. And when we talk about surplus, we are referring to a situation where quantity supplied is more than quantity demanded. So in this case, the price of the commodity will remain the same because no surplus will be created, no shortage will be created. So it's only the growing quantity that will go up. There are several scenarios that you can analyze. You can even have a situation where whilst demand curve is rising, supply curve is falling. You can have a situation like that. Let's say we're in a country where, let's say electricity, during the reign of Mr. John Mahama, we saw that the rainfall was poor, so Akosombo Dam was producing insignificant amount of electricity. So the supply of electricity fell. Meanwhile, Ghana's economy is a growing one, so we have a lot of factories coming up, a lot of young people establishing their own families, demanding electricity. Because once you have a family, you have to be using fridge, iron, television, mobile phone, and all this. So all these things increase electricity, demand for electricity. So you can have a situation where there is a fall in supply, while at the same time there's an increase in demand. So you should go and play around some of these scenarios and see how the initial equilibrium situation will change. Will the equilibrium price increase or decrease? Will the equilibrium quantity increase or decrease? So try and play around some of these things. Uh, the next item we'll move to is market failure, and we'll take a break and come back to look at this. Thank you.